All right, welcome to episode 3 of Coffee and Corona. Who's coffee this time? Oh,
Well, I think
obviously.
that's I think that's pretty obvious.
Yeah, I decided I was going to be a little less clothed. I would have my tank top. You got your coffee there in the nice mug.
Yes,
I've got everything that speaks of sun. So even though I don't actually have the beer, I've got my margarita. You got your
there you
coffee.
go.
We're ready to go.
I do with a handmade Caroline Patrick original mug available for sale.
You made that?
I did. Yeah.
So, like, people who are really diehard fans of Hope Springs Studios are like, just don't wash it. You'll have a little bit of the artist's saliva on there. It's part of the
Yeah.
art.
Yes. 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 Saliva, no extra charge.
No extra charge. That's like a free biosignature right there. That's amazing.
I think yes. I think maybe we'll find some way to what's the word, copyright. Got to copyright my biosignature.
And I know some people would be into that. I don't know who, but I know they're out there. So
Billy Bob Thornton, is that the guy's name?
I don't, I don't
He,
know. Is he into biosignatures?
well, never mind. Old story. Old story.
Well, on
You
that note,
it has nothing whatsoever to do with what we are talking about today.
right. So this episode is sponsored by Hope Springs Studios and Happiness Hangouts and Free Saliva. And what?
Piece of shirt.
Piece of shirt.com, which this is not a piece of shirt, but you can get some interesting shirts, a piece of shirt. It's going to be sponsored by other things too as we go along because, we like to be creative and create new things. So
Right.
I was working on new projects.
Strategic product placement. Glide. Glide dental floss.
We did not get paid for that product placement.
How do you know?
Well, how about this? Mouse. Here's our product. Mouse.
Mouse.
Buy a mouse. All right. So our topic is being positive. Oh, be sharp, a Sharpie.
That's right.
Let's see if we could do some screen share. Her topic today is being positive.
Woohoo!
Now, actually, we're both in good moods. We both were kind of feeling a little bit tired or down or whatever, and now we're in good mood. So my first question actually is, do you have to be in a good mood to be positive?
I would say no. I think your bullet point, the third one down, is a good way of summing that up. It says, when life is dark or dreary, positivity reminds us that the sun still shines and all of the colors of the rainbow abound. And so I think it's what takes positivity is what helps us return to a good mood.
Okay, I like that answer. So I have a follow-up question.
Oh, okay.
Well, I have because toxic positivity is a pretty big topic these days. People talk about how negative other people's positivity can be, or when you're trying to be positive, it can actually have negative effects. I'm curious what your thoughts are on toxic positivity. Like, is positivity toxic by nature?
I kind of have a hard time understanding toxic positivity, I guess. I think that one of the things that I was thinking about in preparation for this is optimism versus being positive, and if there is a difference. And I would say that toxic positivity is optimism with no reality check, with no compassion or understanding of what other people might be going through. I do think if you are blindly positive in what would feel like a self-centered way, I think that would seem artificial and insensitive and, yes, toxic. Am
Yeah.
I understanding what you are talking about with toxic positivity?
Yeah, because you described exactly my thoughts on it. And it's funny because I was thinking about it. Like, I follow Simon Sinek. He's great. And he chimed in on this topic, and he said some stuff that really shocked me. I really was surprised that his point of view would be like this. So, Simon, I love what you do. I think you're great, but I have to call bull um, on your differentiation between positivity and being optimistic. So when he talks about being optimistic, he says optimism is having a bright outlook on the future. And positivity is just negative, positivity. So to me, I think toxic positivity is denial. The one word I would use to describe what you said is denial. If you're living in denial of anything negative in the world, there's nothing wrong with anyone or anything, you're God's perfect little angel, you could do no wrong, that's denial. And you can do a lot of damage with denial, because first you deny anything bad in your world, but then toxic positivity is imposing your denial onto others. And again, that can be really toxic, poisonous. Because if somebody walks up to you and they say, "Oh, my dog died and I just don't know how to handle it," and somebody says, "Oh, well, don't think about that, just it's a beautiful day, you should just focus on the positive." Well,
Yeah.
I call bull on that too, because that's just living in denial of, hey, that person's emotions are real, they're valid, they deserve attention, they deserve a chance to go through mourning what was probably an important person or being in their life. You lose your dog, that's a sad moment. Those emotions deserve to be flowed with. So how can you feel negative and still be positive? I think it is a matter of, well, the point that you read is, what, you can admit that it is dark and dreary, that's okay. You can admit that you're feeling down, that's okay. But when you're there, you just have that mindset of remembering that the good stuff is still there. This too shall pass. During the happiness hangouts, you brought that up, this too shall pass. And I think that's a very important part of having a positive attitude, is just remembering that all the emotions and all the circumstances are temporary. So
Everything, the good and the bad.
yeah. Was that you that was talking about, maybe it was something else that was it was another parable that I'd heard, where this king has some wise servant who says, "Here's this message, only read this message when times are the toughest they've ever been." So he's running from his enemy, he's about to get killed, and he reads this message. The message says, "This too shall pass," right? Well, the people who were trying to kill him couldn't find him. They eventually went away and he lived. So he's celebrating and he's with his kingdom. They won. Everything's great. Well, the servant goes to him and says, "Bless you." Servant says, "Now read that message again. This too shall pass." She's like, "Why would you do that? I'm at the top of my life right now. I'm feeling great. Why would you tell me it's going to end?" Well, because that's the reality.
Yeah, that is. I remember being at it's kind of a sad, it's not really sad because it sums that all up. I went to a celebration of life. It was a family member who had passed away, and they had all of these great photos of her, all around and for people to look at, and there was this really great photo of her with her husband, and they were both probably, in their mid to late 50s, and just, they were sitting on a kind of a pretty beach, like where, like where you are. And you could just see that they were in love with each other and in love with life. Um, and the husband of the woman who had passed away, he was like, oh, if we could have just stayed just right at that moment, because that really was, just the time that you never want it to end. But yeah, those things are, even the good things and the bad things are surprisingly fleeting.
Yeah. So how does positivity play into that, do you think?
Well, I would say that it is, positivity helps you not be afraid. So, things, I know things are going to change. And if I was always, if I was um, a more of a negative person, I actually think I'm a fairly realistic, I think I'm a realistic person with positive tendencies. the, I would, but if I had a more negative outlook, I think I would be afraid, especially right now, because as we've talked about, things are hard right now, and things changed for us really, really quickly. And, 1 minute we're, living our lives and buying toilet paper to our heart's content. And then, the next minute it's like, holy beep, where's all the toilet paper, And then, then we go into shutdown mode, and now we don't know when it's going to open up. We don't know what's going to happen when it does open up. That is that's a pessimist's dream right there. And, but being positive is, okay, we're going to get through this. There are great scientists working on this. It may not be as soon as we want it to. I don't need to be afraid. What I need to do is listen to the logical people speaking and get through this the best I can, supporting myself, supporting my family, supporting my friends, supporting my community.
I think that's what a lot of the positive people did, is that they started reaching out in all these really, I thought it was really neat the way people shifted the way that they treated each other. People are reaching out to loved ones more often, using technology to actually connect with each other in positive ways instead of beating each other up. Um, people's sincerity of like wishing each other well was sincere. And I saw all these really wonderful things as a result of something really, really challenging. And I thought that was really cool. And I think if we have just a negative mindset, then all we see is all the bad stuff that can happen. I know some of those people, they sit there watching the flu trackers and stuff, and tracking all the deaths and tracking the spread, and that's where all their focus goes. And actually, that's a pretty good segue, because one of these talking points is what we focus on expands. Well, you kind of have to ask, well, what do you want more of in your life? And life is a two-sided coin. If you can see the coin without the background thing, because I'm not actually on the beach. I wish I was. That would be nice. But life is a two-sided coin. Always, it always has the good and the bad. Sometimes we're experiencing more of the good, and sometimes we're experiencing more of the bad. And it just is this revolving back and forth of good and bad. And when you focus on the positive, that empowers you to look at opportunities that you would miss if you were focusing only on the negative. And like when I was going through my biggest, most difficult times of healing, I was having to change my life, trying to heal from all of the negativity and the mental, emotional damage and baggage that I was carrying around with me. I just felt like I was surrounded by darkness all the time, and I was looking for light in life. And one of the big topics that came up again and again, and it took me a long time to wrap my head around it, but it was over focus. when you're over focused on your problems, that's all you see. And I really wondered, well, how do I find the right amount of focus? Because if I'm trying to fix my problems, then I have to look at them. But, but if they're so big, my problems were just so big, they felt so big that they overwhelmed my life. And a big part of it was just because of my focus. So the analogy that I thought of for myself was, this is not a penny, it's a quarter. But if you took a coin and you held it up to the sun, well, the sun is hundreds of thousands times bigger than the earth. It's enormous, right? And a coin is just teeny tiny. But if you hold this coin closer up to your eye, you can actually block out the sun with something as tiny as a coin. Whereas if you zoom out on that coin and get some perspective, then, imagine the coin is your problems and you zoom out on your problems and get some perspective. There's more going on in life than your problems. There's more going on in the world than you. And if you are so zoomed in on yourself and so zoomed in on your problems that that's all you can see, well, then that's all you're going to see. Your problems are going to be so much bigger than reality, than they really are, just because you're so focused on them. And you really have to practice zooming out on your problems. So that was my analogy, and my story, my analogy is that I really struggled to zoom out on my problems, but I did. I just practiced it and saying, hey, let's see more to the picture here and put these problems into perspective so that I can actually enjoy more to life than just what's wrong,
Yeah. Yeah. I think, well, I'm not going to say that because that would be stereotyping, but I think sometimes negativity can lead people to being in the same way that positivity can be toxic because you're only sort of thinking about yourself in some ways. Negativity can act the same way, like you were saying, because if you're only focusing on the negative, and how that is most likely because you're worried that it's going to affect you in some negative way. Don't you think? Or not?
Yeah, absolutely. Because, so you called yourself a realist with a side of positivity, right?
Right. With a yes, I'm a realist who has a generally positive outlook. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So, because I've known a lot of people who call themselves realists, but they're actually just negative. And they think they're realists because they are willing to be honest about all that's wrong in the world. The problem is, once they were honest with what's wrong in the world, that's all they could see, that there's just wrong stuff in the world. They forgot that the positive side of the coin was there. So to me, if you're actually a realist, you're always looking at the coin this way. There's both sides.
Mm-hmm.
And you said you've got with a positive spin, it just means that you choose to focus on the head's side of things more.
Mm-hmm.
That's what I heard anyway.
Yeah, I think so. The where is this? I was looking at a few things, and I know that optimism isn't necessarily where is my bookmarks? Here we go. Optimism isn't necessarily the same thing as being positive, but it's kind of close. And so I found this this quiz from a very from a very reputable website called Calm Moment. Would you like to take the quiz and find out if you're how positive you are?
Yeah.
Okay. Let's you mind if I share my screen for a minute?
Oh, wait, did you take this test?
I did.
So you know your results already? Okay.
I do.
Okay. Have you revealed those results and we just didn't know it?
Well, I might have. Let me see if I If you will stop sharing your screen for a minute, I'll share this. I'll share this very this very scientific quiz.
Is this like Cosmo of the spiritual world?
Kind of. Can you see the can you see my web browser?
More free product placement. You're welcome, Calm Moment.
Okay. How optimistic are you, PJ? Let's find out.
All right,
Are you a natural optimist, or do you always think about the negatives? Do you find it easy to cope with unexpected disasters, or do they completely throw you off track? We're going to find out now. This has a little thing about how optimism can improve your physical and mental health, which I do agree. I'd love to talk more about that after the quiz. So
I'm sure we'll talk plenty.
I'm sure we will. Okay, how optimistic are you really?
All right.
Start. Now, this seems like it's written by British women for British women. So just
take it for what it's.
Yes. Okay. You're on your way to your friend's birthday bash when you find out the train you were planning to take has been canceled. What do? You immediately start looking for another way to get there and text your friend to let her know you're going to be late. Do you panic and wonder how you're going to get there and consider canceling your plans? Or do you think it's a disaster? There's no way you're going to be able to get there and get ready in time and find an alternative route.
It's easily the first one. The other two seem a little bit dramatic for me.
Okay.
Not to be judgmental, but.
If something goes wrong at work, do you think it must have been your fault and where you made a mistake? Do you stay calm? It's not the end of the world. You're going to come up with a solution. Or you've already thought of several ways to put things right and it's not a big deal.
It's usually a mix of the second two, and since we can only choose one, let's choose the middle one.
Okay. How do you think your life will be next year? About the same, but you're quite happy with the way it is? It's going to be amazing, and you've already planned lots of things, or you can't really see it any better than this year?
Okay, well, we should have asked this question last year. Last year it was choice 2. And let's see how this year has gone for everybody. So I think we were talking about this before we started recording, but what did you say is like life is totally unpredictable. We just cannot predict the future. So the funny thing is that I think because I set my attitude as the second option, I'm actually doing really great this year in the face of all the challenges. And I've had tough days. I've had tough, periods of days, 3-4 days in a row where I was feeling pretty down. But I rode the wave of those down days and took the positive stuff from them. And actually I'm doing some projects now that came from those tough days because I set that attitude. So, I mean, it's easily the second choice.
Okay. All right.
Good answer.
You're planning a holiday abroad. What are you most worried about? The weather being terrible, that the airline's going to lose your luggage, so you better pack some spares, or it'll be annoying to forget anything, but they'll have shops there and I can always borrow from people that I'm traveling with.
I am definitely a third option type of person.
Okay. We're almost through, dear watchers. You've been asked to be the head bridesmaid for a friend's wedding. How do you feel? Thrilled to be asked and looking forward to help her plan the wedding. Dreading it if anything goes wrong, people are going to think it's your fault, or a little nervous about the responsibility, but touched that she asked you to be the head bridesmaid.
Well, first of all, it's choice D. I'm excited to be a man in a dress at a wedding.
So I'm guessing that would be the first one then.
Probably. I don't, some of these choices are one-dimensional, it's like I'm definitely the first option with a little bit of nervousness, but the nervousness, it's no thing, it's just part of the fun.
a family member is going through a rough patch with their partner. What do you think is going to happen? They're going to break up. I can't see them resolving their differences. In this year's time, they won't even remember what they were arguing about. All relationships have ups and downs, and I'm sure they'll sort this out.
Yeah, the first two, I can't predict the future, so I'd go with 3.
Yeah, that was my feeling. You have a great time with your family when they come to visit. What do you think afterwards? I was a great host today. I'm always a good host. Everyone was in a good mood, and that's why we had such a good time.
Probably the 3rd. I consider myself a good host, but all I try to do is create a good space, and then the people fill it with the energy. And I just choose good people, so it's all their fault that we had a good time.
All right. You run out of petrol in your car and are stranded in the countryside. How are you feeling?
I feel like
the first one's very Eeyore, isn't it? Uh-oh. It's my fault for not checking how much petrol was in the tank before setting out.
Right. Yeah.
It's going to make your dog bark.
They did. They got Cody going. What is it, Bubba? What is it? You almost never react to those things. Almost never. You're so funny.
That was funny.
That was. He never reacts to like TV or speakers or anything. Oh, we're gonna have Cody hello time.
Hello, Cody.
This is my
Cody.
fault.
Is it PJ's fault for not checking how much petrol was in the tank before setting out? Was the gauge faulty? You need to get it looked at, or you'll work out what the problem is and then phone for help.
Well, this is a funny question because my first like real date with a girl was a date to hell, and it wasn't petrol. Well, it was because the oil gauge, I didn't know how to read it. I was in high school and didn't know how to read the oil gauge. I was reading it like a gas gauge.
Oh, so it was like going higher.
It was going lower. It was almost empty, but I was like, we never put oil in. So, I mean, it's got to last a really long time. One trip, I was living in a town by Salem, and I was like, one trip to Portland and back is plenty. Well, the engine froze. We were going to this really nice concert. Engine froze. It turned into this totally embarrassing hours long debacle. Had to call our parents to come save us. It was so embarrassing. I don't know. Should
so the gauge.
It's the first one. So it's kind of a combo between 1 and 3. Now I'd probably just do 3.
So PJ, you're the eternal optimist. You're a happy-go-lucky optimist and always manage to see the bright side of every situation, much like Pollyanna or Maria in The Sound of Music.
I am
Your
like
hills are alive.
I don't want anybody to think I don't have the, because the caveat as a certified stress management coach, I do want to say that people have varying levels of stress management abilities, and people are triggered by different things in stress. And I will say that I get triggered by stressful situations or, triggers that I couldn't foresee and stuff. And so I have to deal with stress just like everyone.
Yeah, of course. No, and I don't think of you as being Pollyanna at all. I think that was good.
Sheesh. Well, that was a fun quiz. How did you do?
It gave me a little pep talk at the end because I guess I could have been a little more optimistic.
All right. Are you willing to share some of the responses you had to other questions?
Well, I think we've spent enough time on the quiz. Most of them, I think, fell in the realistic category. Like, I'm not going to worry about, the gas gauge. We'll figure it out. A lot of things, I think, reflect sort of my, for better or worse, my default, reaction is, I'm going to wait and see what happens. I'm going to try really hard not to worry about this because it could really go either way. And
that's
so,
real, I would say. Being real is worrying will help nothing.
yeah,
Worrying never helps. Focusing on the negative never helps either,
yeah.
you know? And so I think admit what's wrong, admit difficult feelings, admit stuff that we would call negative, but then what are you going to do about it? Do you want to make it better or do you want to make it worse? And I would just say, I call myself a full-on realist. I wouldn't even necessarily call myself an optimist, but I think it's up to you which way it goes. And I want things to go the better way.
Hmm.
And
Yeah,
I believe we have the power to do it too. So why not?
yeah.
Give it
I
a
think that's the real, I think that's the real positive side of your personality.
Does it seem realistic to you?
Yeah, why not? I mean, why, like you, I think totally, why focus on things on the lousy side of things? It is, I do believe that, you manifest in many ways the angst that you're feeling. That doesn't mean, like your bullet points have said, that doesn't mean you walk around in denial, but you get educated and you try to push things towards the most positive outcome that it could be.
Well, can I dive into your question and ask you your question of why focus on the negative? Why do so many people focus on the negative? I mean, it blows my mind that people would just sit there in their problems and wallow in it. But why do they?
Because I think it goes back to what I was saying um, early on, partly about fear. That that when that you folk that like the same reason why people are so afraid of like that they're something bad is going to happen, and so they're focusing on, they don't want that to happen, but they end up focusing on it because they do not want that. But I think that's a good question. I might need to think more about that. The other thing is that I don't know. I think maybe it's also partly human nature. There was a very interesting podcast. Have you ever heard of Hidden Brain on NPR?
Yes, I've actually meant to dive into that, but haven't yet.
Yeah. So they did one on Schadenfreude, which is that feeling. It's kind of like if somebody else is doing really good, you don't you don't like them, or you wish something bad to happen to them because you're not getting that. So it's this sort of this ugly side of being envious or jealous. And I think sometimes I think, things, very complicated aspects of the human personality come into play because you feel, like if things aren't going great for you, it takes energy to think like, okay, I am not going to go into a negative spiral. I'm going to go into a positive spiral. And for whatever reason, the negative spiral just seems easier, and then you want to just take everybody and everything down with you, and it can become this self-fulfilling prophecy.
Mhm. I've had many of those in my life, especially in my youth. I was really raised that way. And, when I hear, when we get to this kind of a topic, a lot of it I feel like comes from programming, how we were raised, what kind of tools were we given to deal with difficult situations. And I will say I wasn't given no tools, no positive tools, no healthy tools. I was given very negative, unhealthy, dysfunctional tools for dealing with life's difficulties. And every time I encounter my parents, I encounter those negative, dysfunctional tools. And so it's very good to see is like, oh, you know what? And I don't blame them or mad at them or anything about like that, because I know that those tools were handed down to them. So, they didn't really have a whole lot of control over those things. So they were doing the best that they could. they passed those tools down to us. And so they thought the best way to deal with life's difficulties was with anger, frustration, something you kind of touched on, which is trying to control situations. And you can't control life. And that just turns into more frustration, more sense of defeat. And I think an important thing for us to remember is that we may not be able to control life, but we can affect it. And that's where I think our attitude comes in really important, because how are we going to affect, the whole coronavirus stuff? I can't control it. If I could, I would, well, I'm not sure I would make it go away because of how people have changed in positive ways, but I would probably make it go away. But I can't control it. But I can affect some of how it affects my life, the lives of the people around me, who I come in contact with. Do I take out my fears and frustrations on them, or do I share my hopeful or whatever, or try to be patient, or listen to when they need to vent their negative stuff? Anyway, is that any kind of answer to your?
Yeah, I think so. What do you do when people are just always negative? Like you go to a meeting and you have like this really great idea, and there's always the person that's just shooting it down and never, just like there's like nothing is ever going to work and it's always going to be crappy. And what do you do about a person like that let's say you have to interact with them on a, like either they're a family member or a coworker or something?
Well, I don't believe in have to, so we have a socially acceptable term for that now, which we call social distancing. If you have to go to the other side of the room, I will do that. No, I'm only half kidding. I'm half kidding because to me, I try to sense where they are. Are they like totally unaware of the attitude? Are they just kind of doing their best with the poor tools or dysfunctional tools? Or are they just being a tool? Because there are some people who are tools. They are purposefully negative. They will do anything to try and tear you down, and that's their way of operating in life at a fairly conscious level. And if that's where they are, then I definitely distance myself. I don't like to be in contact with that energy if I can avoid it. And if it's somebody who's very well-meaningly in a negative place, I'm more patient, because it's easier to let that, like water off a duck's back, in that, if that's their kind of intention.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know. What do you do?
I avoid them. But yes, have to. I typically, I hopefully none of those people are going to be listening to this. I usually just end up tuning them out, because after a while, it's just like, come on, people. Okay, is there anything that is there no idea, no thing that you're actually going to like? It almost feels like, and maybe I get triggered too, that I feel unappreciated because you give somebody, I think we talked about this at a hangout one time, where somebody spent a long time thinking about, oh, here's this really great gift for this person, and they sent it to them, and instead of the person being like, oh my god, this is so beautiful, it's great, they were like, oh wow, this is really big. Which was not the adjective they were looking for.
Yeah. Well, I have one of those in my life that I really can't avoid. And what I do in real life is that I do limit the connection, make sure that the toxicity doesn't bleed over into my life. And it does. And so I have to, cut it off, go take care of myself. And a lot of times I find the non-threatening truth bombs that I can just drop in their path, so that they have that, oh, I'm being a tool moment, and then I leave, so that they can have that little bit of time to themselves as well, to be like, oh, you know what? Here's this thing, this resistance that I'm bumping up against again and again and again. It's unfortunate that it's with me, but I won't take the BS. And so that's their only option, is to face their own BS or never see me again. It's hard. It can be really a real challenge.
Yeah.
That scenario. So I limit it so that the toxicity is limited. I can stay positive, but I don't just let it be. I kind of poke the bear in positive ways a little bit, so that they're continually having to think and face themselves a bit.
Mm-hmm.
Letting them know, hey, you know what? That's not okay. That's also not okay. Not okay. Not okay. Not okay.
Uh, does
At
it
first,
resonate with them?
sorry, what's that?
Do they hear you when you say that?
Yeah, and a lot of times I don't have to say anything. They just get my body language or my facial expression, that it's like, you're you're being like this again. I mean, for real, you're being like this again. And you can say that with just a facial expression, with the body language. You don't have to try and change the person. You just raise the awareness. And so we're off on a totally different topic. I'm sorry.
We are, but but it's still, but I do think it's interesting, and it's relevant in to the topic, because the other side of the coin is negative emotions, and if people are always focused on the negative, they can be they you do need tools to deal with the tools.
Well, it's positivity is tougher when you bring another person into the equation, and we all want positive relationships, and that is dependent on us and what we bring to the relationship, and it's dependent on the other people, what they bring to it, how we deal with negativity. Like you're saying, is like, if they're a source of negativity, what do we do? It's hard when you can see the good in a person, and what they keep bringing to your table is it's like a cat bringing dead mice to the back porch. You're like, thanks for sharing. Sweep, 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 sweep. It's like, get to the garbage or something. So I don't know. What should we talk about next? Should you do? I mean, do we have time for the parable? I think we should do the parable or the song. And I'm kind of thinking we should do your song. Or do you have any other thoughts that we should really dive into?
I think I think we've hit the high points, I would say, on positivity. One final thing I'd like, that a friend of mine pointed out to me, that I think it was a story that she had read in the Guardian, and I guess it relates to positivity. I find it to be it gives me a very positive feeling. Is that this story in the Guardian? It talked about how sort of almost for the first time in the history of our world that we're living in right now, that because of COVID-19, millions of people took a selfless approach, and they stayed home. And they did it for themselves, they did it for the family, they did it for the world. They did it in a way that showed compassion for each other and all of us in just this, in a gigantic way. And I think that is, I think that when I think about that, that is nothing short of remarkable.
Yeah, I have to agree. I think that's been a wonderful takeaway from this whole situation is, and this is a Pollyanna thing, but the world is full of good people. There are way more good people in this world who want a simple, peaceful, happy life than there are people who want bad things to happen. There's way, way more people out there who want good stuff from life, not just for themselves, but for their loved ones, for the planet. And when you say things like that, it's just the validation that, yeah, there's more good people in the world than there are bad, way more good people. And you also brought up fear. People don't know what to do with fear. And so I think having a positive attitude, and this is what you were saying at the very beginning, having a positive attitude helps us to have less fear. And it also helps us to overcome the fear that we do have, because we can feel our fear and still do good things, still do positive things. Still, you can be afraid and still be kind. And that's what you're describing there, is people being kind in a fearful type of situation.
Yep. Yeah.
So that's awesome. Is that a segue into the song that you
I
wanted?
think so. Yeah.
Okay. Well, do you want to share it on your screen or should I?
Why don't you go ahead?
Okay. And do you want to give a little introduction?
Sure. So, my son showed me or played this song for me a long time ago, back when he was in high school, and it quickly became part of my playlist. It's a John Mayer song, and it just has I think it really sums up optimism, and yeah, and that's it. I hope everybody likes it.
Okay. And I think we should probably sign out after this so people can just enjoy and then have some nice thoughtful time to themselves after some beautiful music. So this is brought to you by Hope Spring Studios and Happiness Hangouts and Piece of Shirt. And we hope to see you at the next Coffee and Corona.
All right. Thank you very much. Thanks, PJ.
Thanks, Caroline.